for joining us for our pre-bid meeting for the request for proposal 40873 Indian Springs redevelopment site. As you know, we previously released the requests for qualifications, KCK redevelopment, to both lead developers and sub-consultants, contractors for the 3 separate parcel sites. All were requested to submit their qualifications and to select a site or sites they were interested in developing. The following developers were selected from the RFQ process to move forward and will receive the request for proposal document for the Indian Springs redevelopment site. Those developers are Block and Company, Christie Development, Oak Impact, and Copenhagen Brooks. Thank you all again. And now I will turn this over to Justin Carney of Development Strategies.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. I can go ahead and get started, Gunnar. I didn't know if you wanted to say any words to kind of kick things off. Otherwise, I'll just jump right into the presentation.
Please proceed.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Justin Carney with Development Strategies, and we've been working with the UG on the RFQs and RFPs for a few development sites, UG-owned sites in the county, and I'm really excited about this milestone today. I'm going to be providing just a brief presentation on the former Indian Springs Mall redevelopment site, and as we lead up to the release of the RFP. So as I said, just a few slides here to kind of walk through and orient people to this, and then we can open it up for some questions. If you're joining us virtually, there should be a Q&A function that you can provide questions through. And then those of you that are in person will be able to ask your questions there. And it doesn't want to advance. Sorry for the tech. There we go. So just a quick overview of the process. As Teresa mentioned, we did do an RFQ to solicit interest for this redevelopment site. We had 3 pre-qualified developers, as she mentioned. Those of you that have been following this process may also remember that we were pre-qualifying sub-consultants and subcontractors. This was less about kind of pre-qualifying them to participate as much as, again, kind of gaining interest, raising awareness, and wanting to create a pool of local and regional subcontractors that may not be responding as a prime developer, but would want to have or could have some portion of this development and redevelopment process. And so wanted to kind of create that pool for the prime respondents to be aware of and to tap into as that made sense for their teams. After the RFQ, or kind of concurrently with the RFQ, we also did a market study, really diving into kind of the market understanding of Wyandotte County, sub areas of the county, and particularly of the site here. This is a former mall, and as such, it has a prime location at the intersection of State Avenue, I-635. It's almost 50 acres of development site. The mall has been demolished. The site is currently vacant except for the transit center, the police station, and the area agency on aging. They are already located on the site. We do anticipate and are encouraging any redevelopment to include those community assets, the police station, certainly the transfer station, area agency on aging, possibly bringing in other UG offices, the neighborhood resource centers nearby, and maybe the opportunity for other offices to be a central fixture to any redevelopment. And we also anticipate them actually moving locations. The buildings do not need to stay where they're at now. The property is currently zoned for a mix of business and commercial uses. We anticipate this being able to be broadly enough that would allow for a lot of the development, a lot of the ideas that may come at us from our proposals. There may be, some need to rezone portions or the entire redevelopment site, given the possibility, given ideas that may come from other, from the proposals. But there is a broad commercial and business park use zoning to this site. I've mentioned some of the surrounding areas. There is, this area is in the Midtown area of KCK, and, as such has starting to see a bit more of a suburban character to it in its single-family residential, commercial along State Avenue. For those of you that have been following this process, it's a very different site, as you can imagine, from the 4th and Minnesota being very downtown. So we're starting to move, away from that urban density, but also enough land and enough, the zoning, enough interest here to really make this something that can be appropriate to that Midtown kind of area. So while it may not be, very low density suburban, there is an opportunity here to create some density of uses on this site as it's surrounded by other industrial, the State Avenue and the interstate. One of the things that we've been talking about with the UG, with the community, is a real desire and a real opportunity to create a sense of place here. And I know that there have been many proposals, many ideas floated around of what this redevelopment site could be. There's been a few proposals, kind of single-use proposals. And I think as time has gone on, markets have changed. We're kind of in a different environment than we were 4 or 5 years ago. That there's a real idea to kind of harness an opportunity to create a sense of place and create what some people call a transit-oriented community. If you've heard of TOD, transit-oriented development, or TOC, transit-oriented community, the idea that yes, this is suburban. It needs to be accessible via auto, but it also has a transfer center that KCATA would love to have as a central fixture to any redevelopment here. There's State Avenue as a major point of access, not only for automobiles, but also for transit and maybe even bus rapid transit into the future, connecting this site with places downtown and even across state lines. So, as we've been talking about this site and the potential of this site, we're saying, how can we create a unique, vibrant district here on nearly 50 acres of land? It's a great opportunity with the accessibility, being highly visible, highly accessible, to create something, with a sense of place. And as we talked about it, there's really a spectrum of ideas. You could have something that could be very residentially focused. It might have a mix of densities and retail types. It might include, single family, duplex, townhomes, apartment complexes, and really be focused on a mix of residential, housing for all ages, housing for various family types and sizes, various affordability, and kind of lean into that residential district. You might also look at the other end of the spectrum in what we called here a mixed use kind of focus. Here we're really, starting to say, yes, there's an opportunity for residential here, but there's really also an opportunity to have a mix of employment, services, retail, commercial activity, office activity that is supported maybe by some denser residential opportunities in different locations around the site. But the focal point really is on creating a sense of place around commercial activity, commercial services, and employment. And within that spectrum of something that's more residential or more mixed use and commercial and employment focused, there's very much this idea that transit becomes a centerpiece of this development. With the transit center already in place and the desire for KCATA to have, with the transit authority to say we want a transfer center to be a central feature of this. it really opens up the opportunities for multimodal access to that district, whether it's residential or more commercially mixed-use focused. Throughout, I think there's a real sense, again, of sort of biking and walking in green space as a unifying factor, not only to State Avenue, not only to bike and trail features and multimodal access outside of the site, but certainly as a connectivity, it's like connecting tissue within the site. And you might have different districts within that 50 acres, different areas that would be connected by biking, walking, and green space, and really wanting to lean into that. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to a subsequent slide here, but that's really the opportunity that we're looking at and very excited about that this could be as developers can consider what to do on the site. So as I said, we did the market study. There's a lot of marketable uses here, and I think that there's a broad spectrum of uses. When we think about creating that transit-oriented community, that district, that unique area that could be built up in Midtown, we do have to recognize it's not downtown. And so, the densities may be a little less or would be a little less than the downtown densities, but the size of the parcel would allow for some horizontal mixing of uses. It's not going to be the Legends. We're not going to recreate a mall here. If we could have recreated the mall here, I think the mall might not have gone away, right? So I think there's really something to be said about its midtown position between downtown and the Legends, that also speaks not only geographically, but in a market sense of existing, between that heavily retailed area and kind of a dense office downtown or a dense residential environment that you might find downtown. So that's the market component, the land use and site components. We also wanted to hear from the community. I think it's really important to recognize, we had 2 real community engagement opportunities, 3 if you include the participation at one of the neighborhood summits back in October, where centered around the comprehensive plan, where we had some boards and some possibilities kind of introducing the opportunity of redevelopment here with Indian Springs, but really focused on the site itself. We had an open house on February 7th. It was very well attended. We were on site at the community center, at the community room there on site. We had over 100 people attend over a 2.5 hour period. We had presentations. We had consultants, myself and Kat, as well as representatives from the UG there. We had display boards really emphasizing these possibilities and what could be possible. What would you like to see on the site? And then we recreated all of that online. So the video that we had presenting, the boards that we had were all available for people to see online. And we had well over 700 participants and respondents on that online survey. And this was just the engagement around this effort for this RFP. Obviously, there have been other community town halls and conversations with planning efforts over the years around this site. So we were really trying to bring in all of that input to kind of give us a sense of what the community would like to see. One thing I want to emphasize before I get into the sub-bullets here really is to say that this was not really set up to be a highest votes win sort of thing. The idea wasn't for people to vote and say the thing that got the most votes was the thing that was absolutely going to happen. Really, what we're trying to do here with this community engagement is similar to what we do with the market study. It's really providing sort of guide rails for the developers to consider as they put their proposals together. So within the market framework, there's a lot of opportunities from residential to commercial to office. Similarly, within the engagement and the input that we heard, there are a lot of opportunities, we think, for developers to really tap into what the community was saying and different aspects that they would like to see. So with that as a sort of a caveat or some context setting, you can see here, this is how we kind of introduced having folks tell us what they would like to see. And there was a little bit of dot voting. There was a little bit of post-it noting to tell us what they'd like. And I would say that one thing that was interesting that that seemed to be a real focus was not an emphasis on housing. So when we talk about the spectrum of this transit-oriented community and having a real big residential focus and a mixed-use focus that includes residential, I think we were starting to overwhelmingly hear that they would like that mixed-use development, that's what was preferred. For those that wanted to see housing of some sort integrated into the site, it was very much a focus on workforce housing, housing that would be affordable to folks in that middle income range, and then the possibilities of maybe more senior housing integrated within this development site, and maybe complementing some of the service aspect, the community service and government service aspect that might be brought to this site as sort of that commercial complementary commercial component. Definitely, when you think about office and institution, there was, some real idea, and we put the idea out there of what if we had sort of a satellite government center, for the unified government. Is that something you'd like to see here? And people were saying yes, they liked that idea, especially if those included services that would support the residential and the community more broadly. And then community centers, gathering spaces, library there from that institutional side. On the commercial side, maybe it's no surprise, people want grocery stores, restaurants, outdoor dining. It was interesting when we were hearing comments, and we've had a lot of kind of one-on-one, two-on-one conversations with people at the open house. As I said, there was this, we don't, like the emphasis was on that commercial, that experiential commercial, how can we get outdoor dining, entertainment, restaurants? People were actually really kind of tuned in that they didn't want to recreate the legends right here, right? That opportunity, is 7-8 miles down the road, but what could we have? And restaurants and outdoor dining were a big piece of that. People were talking about, the possibility of big box anchors, maybe as a central feature to this. I think there's just a general desire for kind of that general commercial anchor, and then temporary space for food trucks, again, kind of fitting in with that outdoor dining experience, dining restaurant activity as a central feature for the commercial side. On the public space, you can imagine people were very much into the idea of trails and wide sidewalks connecting this district and connecting this development site with the broader community. Playgrounds, gathering spaces. The idea of, people were throwing out the idea of, could we have a pool? Could we have splash pads? Are there places, if we have residential, how do we also accommodate, opportunities for entertainment for kids and families? Seasonal farmers market, again, those same ideas were coming up downtown, but how do we move that out into this part of the community? And is there an opportunity for that? We wanted to kind of introduce the idea of innovation, and we wanted our developers and our community to really think about how we could integrate innovative concepts into this development. And so we were talking about EV, electric vehicle charging stations, solar panels. How do we, build in rain gardens, kind of complementary with the public spaces, the idea of maybe daylighting the natural springs that, are the site's namesake. So how do we bring those natural, energy efficient and innovative kinds of ideas into this? Stakeholders seem to like the idea. I don't think there was any clear consensus around one piece of it or another. I think people said, yes, if this is a true opportunity for redevelopment, why not kind of future-proof this and bring in some innovative aspects? And so those were the general comments that we heard through the open house and the online survey. And so, what we've done is we've taken this input and we've kind of crafted a request for proposals that, really much leans into this transit-oriented community. This idea that we're going to bring commercial, office, and employment opportunities to this district, maybe supported by some medium density residential connected with environment and open space and recreation and trail opportunities, and really thinking about making sure that we harness this idea for innovation. So we've built that into the criteria for this proposal. And so with the responding developers and the community, we'll be able to see how we've done that. I just want to highlight a few things because it's all detailed. I think it's in section 6 of the RFP, but you can really see this idea of a new transit village where the transit center is an integral part of that. The transit authority was talking about maybe having that transfer center moved up to have direct access off of State Avenue, as an idea. So really making that a central point, connecting it with trails, leaning into the retail and other commercial activity and employment opportunities. On the team side of things, it's very much what you would expect from us, looking at what we need from developers that we're asking and entrusting in the redevelopment of nearly 50 acres in Midtown KCK is having experience and demonstrating that experience and having the financial capacity, having a history of engaging with local communities. One thing that's an important message for anyone that might be listening right now is that the engagement we did was to inform the RFP, that it won't be the last time that people see, really, I mean, we haven't seen the proposals yet, right? So as the proposal gets reviewed, as one gets selected, there's going to have to be community conversations with the developer and the public as that development proposal gets refined into the actual application for redevelopment. And so a history of engaging local communities and experience in using incentives and making this, the kind of development that everyone's going to be proud of and wants to see. We're part of the kind of the team background and capabilities criteria. We have a section on community benefits, and this is where, these are sort of the options, right? These are the things where if these elements get included, a developer might get bonus points in their proposal as the selection committee is reviewing these. And so that's where playgrounds, parks, and open space and the amount of that could be worked into a development and connected through trails and sidewalks become important. Integrating public services, to the site. A developer may not have been thinking too much about who those tenants might be, but if this fits within that development concept that they have, getting those additional points by saying, yes, I will have space for a police station, for AAA to stay on site, for the UG to relocate services to my site. Community rooms, public art, again, community benefits that don't have to be integral to the proposed project, but would add value to the community and certainly give additional points to the proposals. And then there's these policy goals. These are really things that, developers need to be keeping in mind, that if housing is being provided, how much of it is affordable? How much of it could be dedicated to seniors? Is there an opportunity to create affordable retail space? There may be small local businesses and a desire to kind of support local entrepreneurs that may not be able to afford brand new development space, but creating some of that space at a reduced lease rate for those retail spaces certainly are something that the UG would like to see and that developers could get extra points for. And I mentioned the daylighting of the existing springs. This is something that we understand. It's expensive, it's challenging to do, but we also have we've seen this done successfully across the country, and it could really be an environmental benefit, a real amenity, a real focal point of this district, of this transit-oriented community, to have something like that daylighted springs. And so again, kind of having that as a policy goal, it's not required, but certainly if it happens, getting additional points for that. And so renewable technology, renewable energy, other uses kind of being in those policy goals. All of the criteria are set out in the RFP, and you can detail that, and the developers will be using that as a guide to kind of judge their proposals prior to submission. So my final slide here, the RFP schedule. We are here today on February 21st with the pre-release meeting. It is anticipated that the RFP will be released sometime on Friday, the 23rd. I want to just sort of jump to say that, well, I'll just work through this here. So RFP released on Friday. By March 4th, which gives about a week, a little over a week and a weekend, to kind of review the RFP and reach out with any questions or needs for clarification. That those are due on Monday, March 4th. We will turn those responses around by the end of the week, and then that will give an additional 3 full weeks for the developers to put their submissions together to submit on April 1st. And then we will have the review of the evaluation of those proposals over the next week and a half. Interviews, if the interviews are needed, will be scheduled on the April 24th, 5th, and 26th, and with an anticipated notification of the winning proposal on April 29th. So very aggressive timeline. We know that, but we also know that this is there's been a lot of interest. I think there's a lot of great ideas out there, and hopefully the developers are kind of already thinking about and preparing for that submittal. And I think with that, Gunnar, I will just maybe leave this slide up and hand it over to you to facilitate, or Alyssa to facilitate Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Again, Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. That's the conclusion of our presentation. We'll open up a quick question answer. Mr. Carney kind of went over next steps with his presentation, but we can review those at the end as well. So, Ms. Marcy, do we have any questions online? All right,
Not yet.
anybody's generating any questions online, we'll give you a minute. Anybody in the room want to ask a question? Seeing no hands. All right, this happened the last time we did one of these pre-bids, so I'm just going to sit for 60 seconds in case somebody is typing.
I see a hand raised on the screen here, but I don't have access to the Q&A.
I don't have any questions in the, oh, now I do. Will the RFP link be emailed out?
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. UG Procurement will send the RFP directly to all of the pre-qualified lead developers. And then all the other materials, as we've been doing for this whole process, will be online at wykokck.org/redevelopment.
Director, I think there's a hand raised, but we're not going to be having verbal questions. So anybody who has a question needs to type it into the Q&A, please.
And if you can't find the Q&A, I do believe we have a chat function too, so we can do it that way as well. Going once.
I've got another one.
Okay.
Are there any specific sustainability performance criteria or goals included?
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. As Mr. Carney mentioned in the presentation, I think that we are interested in seeing responses with certain innovations. It is a part of the evaluation criteria. While no definite requirements have been codified by the UG's Board of Commissioners, they have adopted both a resolution to support the Regional Climate Action Plan, which addresses sustainability goals. And then if you also were to look at the recently adopted comprehensive plan, that is also policy that does not require things like LEED accreditation or anything like that, but certainly seeks to be more sustainable and have more sustainable development in the future.
And I'll just add to that too, the site is currently undergoing a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment for brownfields, and that will be complete before any site acquisition.
We'll give everybody one more minute for questions in the chat. Looking in the audience one last time. Those questions didn't seem to stir any other questions. Going once. Going twice. Please look to the website for the RFP launch this Friday. Again, if you're already a pre-qualified lead developer, you will receive a direct link from UG Procurement. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to us. Our information is on that same website. Thank you, everybody, for attending today, and we look forward to some proposals. All right.